Here's William Lane Craig to try to make sense of the idea that souls exist.
Dr. Craig, if you were a philosophical dualist, how do you solve the mind-body problem? In particular, how do the substances body and mind causally interact?
The essence of this problem is that if one believes, as Craig does, that matter is made out of one kind of stuff, and the soul or mind is made out of a fundamentally different kind of stuff, it is not clear what it means to say that the two interact. In fact, it's not even clear what the non-physical stuff that supposedly comprises the mind or soul even is. I would say that the physical is that which has location in space-time. But substance dualists, folks who believe that the mind or soul is made out of some non-physical substance, often say that non-physical substance does not have any location. In fact, they simply define it as a substance that does not have any physical attributes. This, of course, makes one wonder exactly what it is. I've never heard a dualist explain what non-physical substance is, only what it is not.
Wow. I am not an expert in philosophy of mind. My colleague, J.P. Moreland, is, and he has just written a book on this subject with Brandon Rickabaugh that is about 600 and some pages long and is going to be published by Wiley Blackwell out of Oxford. And I would commend to you JP's work. In my systematic philosophical theology, however, I did deal with this so-called causal interaction problem because it poses an objection not merely to anthropological dualism, but to divine immateriality or incorporeality. And I think there are a number of things that can be said about that. One thing is that we have very good reason to believe that there is an immaterial mind who has created the universe. I'm thinking here of things like the fine-tuning argument.
The fine-tuning argument has what looks to me like a fatal theological flaw. It is predicated on the idea that life would be impossible in a universe with constants and laws that are even slightly different from the ones it has. However, this can only be true if there is no such thing as an all-powerful deity, because an all-powerful deity would have the power to put life into a universe with any constants. Such a deity would not need to finely tune the universe in order to put life into it. If we lived in a universe with constants that would make the natural development of human beings impossible, that would be far more convincing evidence that human beings are not a natural product of the universe.
The applicability of mathematics.
Craig believes that the reason mathematical ideas so reliably describe the universe is because there is a mind, God of course, which created reality to match the principles of math. In fact, the reverse is true. Math was created by humans to accurately describe the universe.
Kalam cosmological argument.
The Kalam cosmological argument per se only claims to prove that the universe had a cause, and doesn't do so very successfully in my view. It does not claim that said cause was immaterial. You need a distinct argument to conclude that the purported cause of the universe is not physical.
And therefore, we have good reason to believe that such a being exists, even if we don't understand how he interacts with the physical world.
The issue is not just how supposedly non-physical beings interact with the physical world, but more fundamentally, what it even means for such entities to interact with the physical world. In fact, it isn't even clear what it means for anything non-physical to act at all, let alone to interact. If something has no location in space-time, what does it mean to say that it even exists, let alone does anything?
And in the same way, JP and Brandon would say that we have very good reasons for affirming anthropological dualism, even if we do not, at the end of the day, understand how the mind causally interacts with the body. Many mind-body philosophers will point out that we don't really understand, ultimately, how physical objects causally interact with one another. At the deepest level, causation remains a mystery, just as much for physical causation as for mental physical causation.
Again, the crucial question is not how do non-physical things interact with physical things. The crucial question is, what does it even mean to say that non-physical things exist or act at all, let alone interact? And while we may not have a complete understanding of physical interaction, the idea of physical interaction can explain a lot more than substance dualism can. For example, if you suffer a spinal injury and can no longer control your legs, this makes perfect sense under physicalism. Your mind can't control your legs because your mind is a physical process carried out by your brain, and your legs are no longer physically connected to your brain. But if your mind is not physical, why do your legs even need to be connected to your brain in the first place in order for your mind to control them? If your mind can control your physical brain and then cause your brain to move your legs, why can't your mind control your legs directly? Clearly, the idea that the mind is a physical process carried out by the brain gives a fuller account of this phenomenon.
And then the final point that I would make that I think is extremely powerful is Alvin Plantinga's evolutionary argument against naturalism. Plantinga's argument is not really an argument against naturalism. It's really an argument against the causal closure of the physical. And what he shows is that it's impossible rationally to affirm both evolution and the causal closure of the physical, because in that case, your beliefs are not selected for truth value, but merely for survivability, and therefore you can have no confidence that your faculties are reliable.
Plantinga also argues that one's faculties are more probably reliable if we were created by a god rather than if we were created by evolution. I have no idea how he calculates this probability, given that even if we were created by a god, that god did not create us to be infallible. In fact, I think this argument works against the idea that we were created by a god. If we were created by a god who designed our cognitive faculties to know the truth, why do people so frequently come to believe in falsehoods? If the minds we currently have were created by a god, on what basis can you calculate that the level of fallibility that we currently have is lower than what it would be if our cognitive faculties were designed for survival rather than given to us by God for the purpose of discerning truth? Why would cognitive faculties created by an all-powerful and loving God be fallible at all? How did we end up being so bad at knowing the truth?
So that it becomes impossible to affirm naturalism and the causal closure of the physical. This is literally irrational. And in that case, the objection to dualism just completely collapses because it's based upon the belief in naturalism and the causal closure of the physical, which cannot be rationally affirmed.
Craig seems to think that the Venn diagram of beliefs which are true and beliefs which are advantageous to survival is two completely separate circles. It seems more intuitive to me that there is significant overlap between the two circles. While I can imagine some scenarios in which believing a falsehood might be better for survival than believing the truth, why would believing the truth not be more advantageous than believing falsehood a sizable proportion of the time? Also, if we come to believe what we do because believing it helps the species survive, rather than because it's true, what exactly would be the value of knowing the truth? Craig says that any assertion which assumes the causal closure of the physical cannot be rationally affirmed. But why would it be rational to affirm beliefs which reduce the species' chances of survival? The reason scientists don't incorporate the supernatural or the idea of non-physical minds or souls into our models of the universe is that these ideas add nothing useful. They don't allow us to make predictions that appear to match observation. Sure, it's possible that our models, theories, and observations are all illusory, but as long as they consistently give the appearance of helping me reliably navigate this illusory reality, and as long as supernatural ideas do not, then I see no reason not to continue leaving supernatural elements out of our models and theories.
To everyone who helps me out on Patreon, you're a big help. Thanks so much.